By the way, I say that all to say that like exams don't mean anything in real life, right? They do not mean anything in real life. And I'm the example that I failed NPT my first attempt. My GRE, I had to take it multiple times. My grade point average wasn't what it was. And guess what? With all that being said, I still was able to open up a clinic right out after PT school and have success while doing it because I understood the material and cared about people enough to want to get them better. So, but you have to do those things to get to PT school.
It's one shot, now the future is yours. Go! I'm turning dreams into reality. In the lab with the...
Hey, what is up, y'all? How you guys doing? Hope you're having an absolutely amazing day. Welcome to the Pre-PT Grind podcast. I was literally joking about this right before this episode where I was saying that I haven't actually done an actual interview for this podcast in probably like 2 years. Which shows you that if I'm hopping on here to do an interview, it's going to be a special one. And so super excited for it. For those of y'all that are listening to this podcast and you've never heard our episodes before, we got hundreds of them. So just like binge on them. But primarily what we do is we help students get into physical therapy school without wasting time or money. And then once they get into school, we help them figure out how to pay their way through school and graduate without debt. So if that's you in the right place. And so my name is Joseph Ngugi, by the way. I'm a physical therapist. And today I have none other than Dr. Coach Kevin Melendez, who is an absolutely amazing individual who we got to link up in person earlier this year. And recently we were talking about some of the stuff that he's currently doing. And even though he is no longer a student like many of you, some of the stuff that he has done is absolutely out of this world based off of what we were all taught as students. And so this episode is not only going to inspire y'all, but it'll help you guys dream so much bigger than what school has taught us to do. So Coach Kev, Dr. Kev, man, how you feeling, brother?
Dream come true moment, honestly. Like you said, I'd be lying if I said I was not that far, removed from PT school, and like definitely, not that far removed away from getting into PT school. So it's kind of a dream come true because you guys actually, inspired a lot of people. So to be on this platform is like, I got to pinch myself. So it's awesome.
Man, bro, it's an honor for me. And I'm excited about where this conversation is going to go. So let's dive in, man. It's like it's like what I want y'all to do, y'all that are listening right now. Just if you're driving, this might be an episode that you'll probably want to listen to again. I can already tell you that. And if you are somewhere where you can take notes, you might want to do so, because this is just going to be shifting a lot of your perspectives as a student and as a future clinician. So let's start from the beginning, though, because a lot of the people that are listening are students. So one of the key questions that I always want to know is what led you towards physical therapy? Why PT? Where did that desire originate for you?
So it's a typical story, kind of like it's that. So I got injured a couple times. I know I've explained a little bit. When I was 14 was the first time I got injured. I dislocated my shoulder, got shoulder surgery, and then I did PT for that. It was the first time I was exposed to it. And then I fell in love with it then, but it was more of like oh, this is cool. That's when you start taking your exams in school. That's like, what can you become kind of deal. And then at 16 was when I really had like a really bad injury. Like I injured my back really, 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 really bad. I've always been a goer. Like I'm a goer. I go, and that back injury actually forced me to stop. And when that happened, I spent a lot of time in PT, and that's when I fell in love with the craft, and I built a relationship with my PT. Like I was looking forward to telling her any kind of progress or anything that like was going well, and like because of that experience and me getting better, led me to go, wait a minute, I really want to do this. So at 16 years old, actually I started at 14 was when I started doing observation hours, and I didn't even know I was doing it. I was just like, hey mom, can you drop me off on like Tuesday and Thursday to kind of, and that's where kind of the love started with PT.
Oh, wow. I absolutely love it. The reason why I like to ask that question is because for a lot of the students that are listening right now, it's not easy, right? And we're about to talk about some of the challenges that you had. But as a student, think it's important to recognize that we all have our challenges.
Mhm.
But when we feel like we're hitting a wall, one of the first things we need to do is go back to why in the world am I doing this to begin with? Because I think that's
Oh
where you
man.
channel most of your like belief, most of the the uh, the engine that drives you at your lowest. So you're like, you know what? Like, if I give up on this, wait a minute.
Mhm.
Oh crap! Like I wanted to do it since I was, 14. I remember shadowing
Mhm.
you as a 14-year-old. You've had quite a few injuries, so for you, it's like, okay, I
Mhm.
had my injuries. I know what that felt like to be a patient. I know what
Oh
it
yeah.
felt like to even. I mean, part of your story too, and you didn't even touch on it, is the fact that when you like locked in on PT, you basically had to
Mhm.
choose between going down the PT route or
Yeah, or
going
basketball.
down this path of like being an athlete, being a basketball
Yeah.
player, potentially having some solid scholarships that would have allowed you to play
Yeah.
at the collegiate level. Would you mind telling us a little
Mhm.
bit about that prior to us diving into some of the obstacles that you had as a student?
So being injured, I definitely so I play ball for sure. That's my main thing. I spent a lot of time doing it. It was very frustrating though. I remember being like, I'm working so hard, but why don't I feel good? Like I remember asking me that every morning. I was like, why am I always in pain? I'm working my butt off, right? And I just kept like, there's got to be an answer to this. But in where I live, for whatever reason, mind you, I live in Orlando, Florida. It's not a small city. So it was like, why can't I even find this answer? Like they weren't podcasts then. There wasn't, YouTube videos. Like there weren't people like yourself that like that are had this content. There really wasn't. And but so the result of that was me being injured and but once I recovered from my back injury from PT, I played my senior year, play, AAU circuit. Was fortunate enough to get a couple like Division 2 scholarships and Division 3 opportunities. And at that point, I really sat down with my family, and they were like, hey, you're kind of, I don't think you have to go that route of, playing sports to do what you want to do. And because they knew, they're like, Kevin, you're starting to spend a lot more time just learning about the body than than like the actual sport of basketball. And so that's when I realized, you know what, I'm tired of being injured and putting my body through it. So let me just focus on my brain this time around. And that's when I made a decision to go, full focus on. So, but the interesting thing about that is the I always say like the biggest blessing that for whatever reason I've had is that I knew what I wanted to do really early. And that's never changed since I was 14, right? That's probably the biggest blessing. So I knew I had a lot more time to figure out, okay, well, what do I actually need to do because there wasn't so much content like yours out there where, so it's like, what do I need to do? How do I reverse engineer? And I had a lot more time to figure out those answers. And whereas now, if you find it out at 20, soft freshman year or sophomore year, that has to kind of speed up a lot more to figure out what the heck you have to do.
You got it, man. Wow, wow, wow. So quick question. I know this is
Mm.
one of those like you said something and I thought of another
Yeah.
question, which I'm super curious about. So for someone like for you, you obviously were in a position where you had locked in on the career that you wanted to do pretty early on, right? Which made it, making certain decisions easier, right? Because you already
Mm-hmm.
knew. Um, what about for students that like the ones that you just said that might not necessarily know or find out later? What are some of the things just from the way you kind of observed physical therapy or decided that this was the career that you wanted to go down, like what are some things that you could at least give as tips to someone that is like, yo, I still have no idea what I want to do. Is PT what I want to do? Is something else what I want to do? What are some tools that you used to kind of make that decision?
Mm-hmm.
Let's kind of see where this goes.
I love this. I truly believe self-awareness is a superpower. Like I truly believe so. The more self-aware, which takes vulnerability and learning yourself and understanding like where do you need to get better at, what do you enjoy doing, and it's like the constant process of like you know what am I good at, what am I bad at, what do I enjoy, and like answering those questions are actually kind of difficult when you force yourself to really like even write it down. And so to answer that question directly, it's like go observe things. Like go do observation hours, not just in PT, but like go see what it's like to be a nurse for a day. Go see what it's like to do occupational therapy or speech therapy or a surgeon. Like go see what their day to day is, and you'll learn really quick. Like, oh no, I don't actually like. Even though I wanted to be a PT since 14, I did exactly that. I wanted to make sure if I'm gonna spend my rest of my life doing that. So I spent so many days looking. I worked in an optometrist office for 4 years, because I was like, oh, okay, is this really something? No. So that's what I would say. Spend time in other fields, like an absorbent amount of time, not one day, not 2 days. Like do a couple, do a week and see what that feels like.
That's such a good answer. That's such a good answer. Exposure,
Hmm.
expose the mess out of yourself, whether it's other
Hmm.
fields, whether it's, and even within one field, it's just finding different
Oh yeah.
settings, right? Because like, it's like, we both know that in any setting, you can, shadow someone that is amazing at what they do. And you're like, man, I want to be that. And then you can see someone else literally in the same profession, same specialization. And you're like, nah, I
Hmm.
don't want to do what they do. And so really like expose yourself to as many opportunities as possible, because even with but even with PT, there were certain like clinics that I went to when I was a student. I was like, oh no, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And then there was other clinics where I was like,
Yeah.
yo, this is what y'all do. Y'all get paid to do this. And so
Yeah.
so absolutely amazing answers. Now,
Also, can
go
I
go
add a
go
little
go.
tidbit
Oh
of
yeah,
what I would
yeah.
say
Oh bro,
too?
it's yours.
What I would also say is like, um, understanding that in college. So these individuals are in college. You're in the incubator of life, right? So there's this weird like phase that you're in where you get to try stuff and use the excuse of, hey, I'm in college, right? So you'll be surprised because I had a lot of fear like asking companies like, can I come shadow? Like there was a lot of fear involved with that, and like when they said yes, you would feel so happy. If they said no, you wouldn't. But the fact that you're in college, use that. Hey, I'm in college. I want to know I want to know if this is what I want to do. You'll be surprised how many people actually want to help and help figure that out with you and for you.
Got it. That's a pro tip right there.
Hmm.
It's funny. I hadn't even thought of that, but but you're 100% correct. You can use. I mean, you can use college for like discounts. I mean, shoot, like
Yeah.
being a college student is a hack. But yeah, you're
Hmm.
basically saying like use it as an entryway. So that if
Hmm.
you're nervous, like talk about it from the standpoint of I'm a student trying to do X, Y, and Z, and that'll
Exactly.
open doors for you. I love that.
Hmm.
I love that.
Hmm.
So now you chose physical therapy and you're like, all right,
Hmm.
this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Let's lock in. What most of us forget is that there's challenges along the way. And I think I'd already mentioned that earlier in this podcast. What were your biggest challenges? Like, what were the things where now you were like, this is the career path that I am taking on? What were your biggest obstacles first as a pre-PT and then
Hmm.
secondly as a PT student? Because I think those are two different groups or two different stages. And so as a
Hmm.
pre-PD, prior to getting your first acceptance letter, what were the biggest obstacles that you faced? Let's start with that.
Biggest obstacle, chemistry is what I would say, right? No, so so yeah, I got caught up in probably the college life, I would fair to say. So, my first semester or my first year GPA wasn't everything that it should have been, so you kind of play catch up those next couple years, and that came with the results of me playing catch up was finally a part there was a part of life that humbled me, and I experienced a loss that in my life that kind of forced me to go, hey, you probably you need to that person that I lost kind of looked at me, and the way that that person always looked at me had so much potential, and so I just wanted to go, oh, I want to become the person that that person saw me, and so at that moment I made a realization, said no, let me get back on track and kind of refocus and get back to this thing that I'm really passionate about. So I had this like I almost went south, like I had a college life, and but I refocused, reverse engineered, retook classes. My Chem 1, I got I didn't get a great grade. I think I got like a C minus, right? And that has a huge impact on your prerequisites, right? So or can. Um and so I retook the class, I aced it, and that was a big hurdle, for sure.
Man, that's big. So for you, it took a pretty significant loss to kind of
Mhm.
steer the ship around, right? And kind of be
For
like, okay,
sure.
okay, wow. Appreciate you sharing that.
Mhm.
For those of y'all that are students right now, or at least pre-PTs, the reason why I asked that question is because you're not the only one.
Mhm.
You really are not.
Mhm.
Chemistry, shoot. I mean, most of us struggle with chemistry. It might be physics for y'all, it might be bio,
Mhm.
it might be whatever. But if it's academic, if it's whatever your challenge is, and we could go down
Mhm.
the rabbit hole, just understand you're not the only one. And I think
Yeah.
when you can just digest that, then it allows you to say, okay, cool. Like, what did someone like Kevin do, or what
Mhm.
did other people do to kind of pick themselves back up, retake a class, get better than a C- or whatever. And so you were about to say something else though.
I was gonna say one other thing that I struggle with was with comparing yourself. Like I struggled with that. It was like this, am I good enough? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? And the way that I got over that actually was asking other students that were observing what were their statistics. And I always said, I was like, what are your stats? Like, and what I meant by that, what's your GPA, what's your prereq GPA, what observation hours do you have? And what I realized, it isn't about tearing each other down. It's about saying, oh, wait, where did you get observation hours at? And then they go, I did it here. And then you go, wait, how did you get that opportunity? And then you start working with each other. And then you realize really quick, the ones that are scared or don't tell you their statistics, they have their own insecurities that they're worried about. The ones that are really about this life and want to help and they're in it for the right reasons are not scared to, hey, this is what I'm at, because that means that they're looking for solutions as well. And then you guys work together to get there. So that's how you build a network of, there's still people to this day that I'll be like, yeah, we shadowed together, and like that's a connection that you have when you start building that network of, and team.
I think it's one of these fears that we've all had, where, I think until we get to the stage that you're talking about, we
Mhm.
start to think, well, every person that has an advantage over me is potentially going to take my spot, right? It's almost like everybody's the enemy, right? It's like, I
Mhm.
can't help you
Mhm.
because you are the enemy. And it's what you're talking about is the exact opposite. You're basically saying that we can leverage each other, right? And
Yes.
it might be leveraging observation hour locations like what you were talking
Mhm.
about. It might also be leveraging knowledge. Like, shoot, man,
Mhm.
like if you and I were like, peers, or we were shadowing together or whatnot, and you were struggling with chemistry but I did great in chemistry, and I
Yes.
was struggling
Yes.
in physics but you were great in physics, then we could
Yeah.
actually leverage that. And that's actually powerful. And I feel like
Mhm.
many of us weren't taught that because we've just
Mm-mm.
thought that it's competition, and competition means I cannot help other people. But the problem with that is the fact that
Mhm.
I'm trying not to help other people, but I'm also not receiving any help. So then I
Yeah.
start to basically lock myself in. I'm comparing myself to everybody else.
Mhm.
I'm overwhelmed. I'm in my head. Man.
Yeah.
It just kind of leads to this spiral that really does not serve anybody. And most of the students that isolate themselves, we're starting to see, man, that they're the ones that
Yeah.
struggle the most. So
In PT school, by the way, they struggle in PT school. So we'll get to
talk
that.
about that. Talk about that.
Yeah. Before that, I would like to say there's two ways you can have the tallest building, right? The first way is you can tear somebody's building down, and that way you can have you can have a very 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 small building, but it's technically the tallest one. Or you guys just continue to grow the buildings together, and at some point, even if you're not the tallest, you're both at an absorbent amount of level that's considerably bigger than if you just tear somebody else down. So that's for real. Like life, that's 100% with life. Like um, they maybe we don't realize it or we're not taught that. Like it's not a crab in a barrel kind of situation. There's a lot out there. Um, and then in PT school,
Let's
one
talk about
the
that.
yeah, the struggle I had was test taking, man. I wasn't the best test taker, and I had to, it goes back to self-awareness. Why? And fortunate enough, I had great teachers that were like, hey Kev, this doesn't really make any sense. How come you're doing really really well and everything else, but your tests is just aren't it's just you're not showing the knowledge that we know you have. So I had great instructors that were like, hey, let's sit down and actually like read these questions together, and like, where's your mind going? And what really blew my mind was I had gone like a terrible grade, like the type of grade that like I was fearful whether I was going to drop out of PT school or not, right? And so I had gone, actually I'll be fully transparent. In cardio, it was a cardio test. I got like a 47, right? Like that's, you have to average a 75 and above in my curriculum for exams to be able to, for you to be able to pass that class. If not, you drop out of PT school, right? So I had to average like a B plus from that point on. That teacher was like, hey Kev, I want to review the exam with you. This was like a month later. A month later, she read the question, I answered it out loud, and so I didn't see the question. I answered it out loud. She said if I would have taken that same exact test that way, I would have gone a B on the exam. So she was like, something is not adding up, right? Something's not adding up, Kev. Like there's something off about with the way that you're actually taking your exam. And at that point, I started learning, okay, there was a lot of second guessing. There was a lot of, the test taking strategies. Oh, wait, they're not actually trying to, like, I used to be like, oh, they're trying to trick me out, right? Like, and like that's obviously the answer, but that can't be it because it's too obvious. And then not pick it, you know. And so I had to learn that the strategies and really go, okay, let me focus on how to actually, study and prepare and how to take a test, knowing that at the end of the day we have to pass an MPTE. That's just a test. So you got to learn how to, take a test. And then, that was a big struggle for me for sure.
Wow,
Mm.
man. Can I ask you a question? So,
Yeah.
as someone that struggled with exams, right, and
Yeah.
obviously knowing that it's not knowledge, and I think this is important for students to hear because there are
Yeah.
students that, even at the pre-PT level, struggle with things like the GRE or struggle with,
Hmm.
different exams for their prerequisite classes. It's just, it's all challenging exams.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of times we tend to feel like we're not smart, right? It's like, man, if I can't
Hmm.
get the grade I need, I don't think I'm smart enough. And what you were just talking about is the fact that the same exam that you basically failed, right? When it was done verbally, you were able to get potentially a B, right? Because
Yeah.
you actually knew the information. It was just the fact
Hmm.
that whether it was anxiety or whether it was second guessing or
Hmm.
whatever the things were that were actually holding you back on the actual exam, that's
Hmm.
what led to the grade that you had. So for you, my question is, for students that are in that position, what would you tell them? Like, what is the process that they can kind of start using based off of what you experienced to kind of start figuring out how to like start, maybe potentially improving their test taking approach? And this is not to coach them necessarily, but
Hmm.
like, what is just some piece of advice? Like, if a random PT student or a pre-PT
Yeah.
was like, hey man, listen, bro, I'm struggling with the same thing you had. What are some things
Yeah.
I could start doing? What would you say?
Yeah. The first thing I would say is, and it's gonna sound so silly, but I know if there's people like me, like go review your exam. Like I remember vividly, like if I got a bad grade, I was like, I just don't want to look at it no more. Like it's done, it's done, it's done. Like, but it's like, no, 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 go back and see and have that conversation of like, why did I pick this one? And like review it. That way you build the confidence of going, no, this isn't just something that I've ignored. I actually understand why I got that wrong, why I got that right. It's not just done. And you build those habits, which will then start to force you to be more curious and just develop better habits of like not having fear with exposure, right? So it's also a numbers game too. Like how how many questions can you do before you start feeling comfortable, right? So I take more like the MPT is 50, it's 50 questions. So just take like these little like mini quizzes every so often. That way you get used to what 50 minutes feels like or 50 questions feels like for you, especially in a low pressure situation. Because if you're not used to taking 50 questions, even in a low pressure situation, it's going to feel really pressured, really whatever, high. Versus when it actually comes time for a really, really high pressure situation, you're going to not know what to do. So just exposing yourself to a bunch of questions. And I know life is, by the way, I say that all to say that like exams don't mean anything in real life, right? They do not mean anything in real life. And I'm the example that I failed MPT my first attempt. My GRE, I had to take it multiple times. My grade point average wasn't what it was. And guess what? With all that being said, I still was able to open up a clinic right out after PT school and have success while doing it because I understood the material and cared about people enough to want to get them better. So, but you have to do those things to get to PT school.
Man, that's big because I think think about it, bro. Like from childhood, we've relied on exams and grades as what defines whether we're good enough and whatnot. And all of a sudden, it's like, man, I'm a professional, and it really means
Mm-hmm.
nothing. I mean, shoot, I'm sure you haven't had a single patient hit you up and say, hey, man, listen, so before we work together, what were your grades? What were your? I mean, they don't care. They
Mm-hmm.
really do not care, and so that is big. And so for those y'all that are struggling with tests, hopefully that helped. And so you alluded to it a little bit. So you alluded to the fact that your board exam did not go as planned. So
Mm-hmm.
could you talk to us about that? Mainly because we might have some PT students that are listening to this that
Mm-hmm.
are nervous about it, and we tend to think, man, if I don't pass my board exam, it's the end of the world. It's all this money that I've put into school or loans.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
put. It's going to be wasted, right? And so talk us through your experience because you already alluded to the fact that when you
Mhm.
took the boards the first time, it did not go as planned. So what happened? How did you come back from that in order to crush it the second time?
So I finished school in May, at the time, you know, and then you have like 16 weeks until your board exam. And I was like, you know, I'm gonna take a couple weeks off just to kind of refresh, recalibrate. That was great. That was a great idea. I don't actually, it's actually a great idea. That way, you know, you can get started and be full focus. But then life happened. So, you know, my partner at the time she was dealing with like a loss of her family. So there was a lot of trauma with that. There was just a lot of life stuff. You know, things are moving, like I had gone COVID like 2 weeks before the actual exam, and that was when it was like I was out for 2 weeks. You know, it was like that COVID. I had gone like on a like mini trip that took away my focus. So there was a lot of like focus things, and whenever I felt like there was actually my moment to study, it just wasn't enough time and ability to make and build confidence. Like I've said this, I actually said this on a recent podcast, Greg's podcast. I said confidence is built when you keep promises to yourself, right? Arrogance is built when you lie to people about the promises that you kept to yourself, right? So at
Hold on,
that
hold on,
point,
hold on, hold on, hold on. You gotta say that one more time for the people. I don't know if they heard that, especially the second part. Say that one more time. Confidence versus arrogance. What's the difference?
yeah, confidence is built when you keep promises to yourself.
Mhm.
Arrogance is when you lie to people about the promises you didn't keep to yourself. And that's really been important for me.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. And so I didn't keep enough promises to myself to be able to have the confidence when it came time to take the NPTE. Right. So and therefore it led me to fail. I tried my best, fail. And at that point I remember just feeling really, I was down in the dumps, like down as you can think. And what really made me down was not the failure. It was the me feeling like I let my family down, like my friends down, like all the people that had made so much sacrifice for me not being in their life during my PT years, as much as I would have loved to be. And the best thing they could have they did, and this is why I say that like the reason why I'm saying this, because you want to rely on the people that love and care about you, is because what their response was the exact opposite of what I expected. Like I expected them to like be like, how can you do this? How, you know, like all you had was one job, was to pass your MPTE. Like, how dare you? Like, you know, that kind of thing. And as soon as I said it, they were just, all right, what do we got to do to help you to pass the next one? Like that was their response. And once they told me that, I was like, oh, I'm good. Like I'm good. And mind you, this is with being financially like not good, right? Like not good at all. Emotionally not good. Physically not good. I had all nothing was I was going through a lot. But the fact that like my loved ones at that time were like, hey, what? That's fine. Hey, you failed. That's fine. You can be pissed off, but what do we got to do next to get you where you need to go? And that was all I needed.
Man, shoot, you had an amazing support system.
Mm-hmm.
You had a
Yeah.
phenomenal support system, and not everyone has that. And
Mm-mm.
but for those of y'all that are listening to this, if you don't have one, please start building one.
Start
Um,
building one. Mm-hmm.
Start building one wherever you're at in your journey, because in those moments, man, it's probably the best thing you could have heard, because uh, you might have been beating yourself up too, because
Mm-hmm.
life had happened, right? But you were still like, crap, like this is not what I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to happen. And you're also fearing that now, because of the situation you were in, obviously you're done with school, you in debt, all the different things. But now you have people that are close to you, and you're like, yo, this is what happened. And they're like, all right, cool. Like, how do we support you? How do we make sure that this next time things go
Mm-hmm.
well? And it obviously did, right? And so you're obviously a licensed clinician today
Mm-hmm.
because of that. But for those of y'all listening, please, please, please find a support system of people,
Yeah.
because that's a big deal. Can we change the topic a little bit? You
Love
cool with
to.
that? So
Love it.
so I okay, getting into PT school is stage one. So we've already talked about that. Finishing
Mm-hmm.
school is stage two, because obviously once you get into school, you got to finish it.
You got to
Um,
finish.
but I'm remembering a conversation that our professors had with our class when we were finishing our last year of PT school, and it lines up perfectly with what you've done right out of school. And this was around the time when I was, learning about Greg Todd and things like that. And so my mindset was already changing on what you could do out of school and business and all that stuff. But there's one statement that was made, and I want us to talk about it, because you've done the exact opposite, where they basically said, "Hey, listen, somebody asked about like when can I open up my own practice? When can I
Mm.
do X, Y, and Z?" Right? And so the answer that was given to us was 10 years.
Ooh.
So here's why. Hold up, bro. We gonna go down the rabbit hole. So it was 10 years. And this professor said 10 years because you want to have all the experience, as if just being a better clinician is what does it. Anyway, so 10 years, you got to practice for 10 years. And then after that, you might be good enough, this is what they said, you might be good enough to open your own practice. Now, at the time, most of us were like, okay, because we're students and we're scared. I mean, I think myself and another classmate were the only ones that were starting to kind of shift the way we thought, but it was just because of exposure to Greg and the world that you're very familiar with. But what's happened since is the fact that everything they said was actually false. And there's something that Greg actually said earlier this year that blew my mind. And then I want us to dive into what you've done, because you've literally done the opposite of that, right? The idea of opening up a practice less than a year out of school is just, to the professors that we had, was like, that's foolish. Like no one's gonna pay you. You're gonna like it won't succeed, right? And so Greg actually said this earlier this year, and it changed the game for me. He said the reason why they tell you that is because they want you to get so stuck in your jobs or in the cycle of what it is to be a clinician that you actually give up on the dream that you originally had.
Yeah.
It's really why. And so what you've done though is you said, nah, man, screw that. So tell us, man, like what if, like, talk to us about the process of what you did out of school, opening up a practice out of school. What was that journey like? What were the fears that you had? In order to give the students that are listening to this episode just a glimpse of what's possible, because I know that there's some students that are like, I've never thought about business, but I also know that there's other students that are like, I would actually love to see what it would look like to do something on my own, or to actually build my own thing shortly after school or even right after school. So talk to us about that journey and what you would say to other students that are considering doing the same thing when they graduate.
Oh man. So it goes back to, actually, let's go back a little bit to why did I pick the curriculum or the program that I did? That's probably the important thing. I knew what I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to open a PT clinic for a while, but like you said, I was told the same thing. I was told like 5 years, 10 years, like, you have to be able to build a reputation of like, and be able to know that you can treat people and this. And I'm like, well, then why am I going to school for? Like, am I learn? Like, I'm supposed to learn. Anyways, so I wanted to go to I did a hybrid program. And the reason why I did a hybrid program, it's essentially a class and a half less a semester. And it gives you the chance, it gives those individuals a chance to work while going to PT school, right? I decided to go, okay, well, and if that's the case, then I want to be able to continue to be exposed in the PT world. So I was a tech during PT school, so that way it allowed me to practice what I was doing and what I was learning, but it also gave me a chance to learn about business. So without feeling guilty, if you're a full-time student and you have so much on your plate, and PT school is hard, it is, and it continues to get harder and harder because there's so many things and responsibilities we have to have. So I chose, okay, well, let me take a class and a half less, and in that class and a half less, I'm going to absorb business. I'm going to understand how things work from a financial aspect. Like, how does this work? Even with that being said, I still didn't think I could open up a clinic right away, right? No one had said that, like, if that wasn't possible. But in my mind, I kept like asking myself, like, something doesn't make sense to why I can't. Because the reasons they would say was, well, you're not as good of a clinician, right? That was number one reason. Number two was like financial stuff. Well, you haven't made any money. How can you even open up a clinic, right? And during my rotations, the first answer was answered. Like, that first question was answered for me. I was learning a lot from these individuals that were in the field for 20 years. But what I really realized is the only difference between a phenomenal clinician and an average clinician is that they care. That was the only difference. Like, yeah, there's different certifications, blah, blah, but genuinely, the only difference was those who cared more got patients better, right? So once that happened, I was like, well, all right, well, that's kind of a, self-awareness. I care, like, whether it's, it's a gift and a curse, I care, I care, right? So it's like, okay, well, I can check that off to why I can open up a clinic, right? Number two is the financial aspect of it. Well, in that case, you go, okay, well, let me learn. There's so many different ways to open up business. Like, there's so many different types of business. So if you want to start off with you just go to people's homes, right? Or you start off which I did, I rented a space out of somebody else's facility, right? But I didn't like the process of patient experience, and like literally from when they enter the door to when they're done with their treatment. I didn't like how that was going because it wasn't under, a lot of it wasn't under my terms. It was under the facility, you know? And so at that point, you know, made the commitment to go, okay, well, let me open up my own brick and mortar and figure that out, you know, and it's not as expensive, you know, um, it's not, I'm trying to give clarity to open, it's different in so many different areas, but you know, it's, people think it's like 100,000 or 50,000 or whatever, you know, it's as you need, really. All you need is a room and a table to start, a room and a table to start, and then you build from there. And then as you go and as you gain money, then you can you know, add stuff. But
Man. Yeah, first of all, I don't want people to miss what you said. The only difference between basically a good clinician and a bad clinician is just how much you care. That's it. It's
mhm.
not and I think that that's so powerful because as a new grad, you come out scared that you don't know enough, scared
Mm.
that what do they used to say? They say, you know, I know enough not to hurt anybody. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
there's so much fear because it's the first time you're doing something without a clinical instructor and all these different things. But man, I think it's the beauty and understanding that we continue to evolve and grow as clinicians. And I think what you said is it. You know, I wish someone would have told me that, which is just care. If you
Just
care,
care.
people will
Yeah.
get better. Period.
Yeah.
Period. The
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
Um,
I will add something though. I
yeah.
do, just because I think this is something that I wish would have, this is why I opened my clinic. Truthfully, this is the premise of why I opened up my clinic. Um, the number one and two things, if you look at most of our clinical practice guidelines, our CPGs, right? The number one thing that you notice that helps clients is patient education, right? And then you know, number two, then you can go into the whatever, but patient education and patient experience, really, like their ability to go, I had a good experience with XYZ determines, and we can even get to the like the science behind it, right? Like if they're more alert, then now their nervous system isn't responding as well to certain things, and blah 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 blah. But truthfully, patient experience and patient education is super important to whatever diagnosis we're given. So it's really hard to do that when you have to treat 2 to 3 to 4 patients an hour, right? Because then you can't educate. Maybe somebody's an audio learner or a visual learner or a tactile learner. You can't spend that time to even get to know whether they are that, right? So when I wanted to create a system of care that goes, we can make sure that one thing that they're going to get when they come here is education and experience, and that comes with customer service. It's really hard to provide optimal customer service, no matter what these mill run in the mill traditional, you know, traditional outpatient clinics do. It's very hard to do when you have 3 to 4 people at a time, even 2 people at a time, you know, and heavy documentation and constantly taking copays and XYZ. It's like you can't. What makes people feel good is that when they come in, it's their time, and when they and during that time you give them your utmost respect and that they enjoy the entire experience, even from the how, what is the temperature, what is the smells, what are the, like every little detail that you can to provide the experience, because that's not me trying to be bougie or whatever. That is according to evidence-based research, which is what we're known for, right? What we have to kind of stamp our feet on is patient education, and client experience is the what catapults the best results.
Wow. 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 But I think we've all experienced something like that. You know, I think, you know,
Mm-hmm.
think of the best experience that you've ever had being cared for anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel it as a customer or as a patient or as a whatever, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
shifting how we do what we do into that model just changes the experience for the people that you work with. And so man, that's a big deal. And I know that, you know, we've been coached by Greg,
Yeah.
which for we could go down the business rabbit hole, but I know that this is for students, right? So
Yeah.
I'll say this, and if you want to touch on this, feel free to, but I'll
Mm-hmm.
say this: business as you know it might not be the best kind of business, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
when we see clinics, we're used to seeing what we typically see, which is, you know, maybe a whole bunch of patients. We're used to hearing terms like mill. I think the stuff I
Mm-hmm.
used to hear as a student. And so it scares you. It scares you into thinking, man, it's going to be super overwhelming. But one of the biggest things that we've learned is obviously how to do things that are, you know, like solution, like we're trying to solve a major solution for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're trying to
Yeah.
figure out like what's the actual outcome that I'm trying to create for people. I'm not just here to collect the copay. I'm not just here to get you stronger. It's like, what are you trying to like do, right? And so I think when you
Yeah.
can think that way, you end up not only being able to, get better clients that are more committed, but more importantly, people actually willing to pay more, right? Because
Mm,
it's in what they actually want, and so like it's the same thing even with what we do, what you do. And if you do that, you're able to provide a higher value. You're able to get paid more and people stay, right? And so
mhm.
so even financially, it really allows you to have a very, very profitable business, which is a game changer. And so for you, like, tell us a bit. I mean, I don't want them to like get all, like crazy and losing their minds or whatever, because it does take a certain type of model, which
Yep.
y'all just have. Like, if you want to go down the business path, just find people to guide you that you're like, I want to follow what they have done, right? I don't
Yeah.
like if you're just listening to just anybody that's opened up a practice, you might be getting advice that'll take you down a path that you might not enjoy.
Yeah.
But if you really, really want to do this right, listen to people that have done it, but have done it at a level where you're like, yo, I want their life. I want their
Yeah.
lifestyle. I want their ability to impact people in the way they do it. I want their freedom. I want all of that. And so
Yeah.
that's what we've done in Greg and other coaches that we've had. And so for you, like, what does that turn into? So you did open up a practice within the
Mhm.
first year out of school, like you were saying.
Yeah.
What did that turn into? Is it something where you're still doing it for like side hustle money? Is it is
Oh,
it doing
wow.
fairly well? Like where are we at? Because I think we also have beliefs that this also takes an insanely long time to ever
Yeah.
build up. Remember, we were told 5-10 years is when
Yeah.
we should wait until we have the reputation to
Mhm.
build a practice or a business. So what does that tangibly look like for you so that they can understand, oh, this is real?
Yeah. So one thing, it sounds silly, but but it's gonna be practical. I hope, because I know it was for me. The most, the biggest expense in a business is salary, right? So that's, I know it sounds silly, but it's not the cost of like equipment, it's not the your rent, it's not like all the stuff that you're trying to do. It is, all right, well, salary. So the first thing understanding is like, what different type of businesses are there? Are you a business, right? In other words, you have a bunch of employees under you, or you have employees under you. Are you a lifestyle business, which is, it can be you and somebody else, but like you guys just have a business that is used to create or used to produce the lifestyle you want. Do you want to work 4 days a week, 5 days a week? Great. Like 3 days a week, whatever it is you're trying to do. First thing's understanding. Okay, now, all right. Well, if salaries are most expensive thing, then how do I get to that point to make whatever X amount of money you want to make? And you have to be self-aware. Again, goes back to that self-awareness as a superpower. What do you feel comfortable and what do you value as income? Yeah, there's the actual dollar amount you need to be able to pay stuff. And there's also like the time value, right? Which I value very much. Um, so I so to answer your question directly, I did work part-time while my business was literally getting built up. Like we were building the brick and mortar, we're putting things together, blah blah blah. I got my license in October. I worked all the way till my my office opened May 4th, right? But this is the thing, I was still working. So I was probably working about 70, 80 hours a week because I was working for the other company while also working my company for about until July 15th was my last day at that other company. And that was straight up because thankfully, knock on wood, thankfully things were going really well to the point where I was like, I don't need both. I actually need the extra time that I was working with the other company to be able to put into this company, and put into these clients. And so that was the timeline. There was about so to answer it, the more you learn about business, the faster you can get out of having to do the side hustle thing. Yeah, for sure.
Boom, boom. Game changer. Absolute game changer. And if you guys want to hear more about that story, Greg Todd is our mutual coach. If you guys go to the Wealth Code Secrets podcast,
Hmm.
you'll hear more the business side of that journey. And it's absolutely amazing. So if you've enjoyed this episode so far, just go to that podcast. I don't know, it's episode something, maybe close to 200. He's got
I think
so
it's
many
195.
episodes.
195. Yeah, I think.
195. All right, episode
Yeah.
195 of the Wealth Code Secrets podcast. Go listen to it. It's good. It's absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Especially if you're interested in that. What are some words of wisdom, man? We'll wrap it up with this. And whatever
Yeah.
you as a student, knowing where you were as a pre-PT, knowing where you were as a PT student, obviously as an,
Yeah.
as a as a PT now with your own business, what are some words of wisdom that you would give, or some perspectives that you would give that you wish someone would have given to you at that time? And that's how we'll wrap up the episode.
Perfect. I'll go. I'll do all three phases. So, pre PT, I would tell the words of wisdom. I would say is, stay curious. Stay curious. Open minded. Stay curious. That is another superpower. Like, the more curious you are, the more you're willing to ask questions, but also help others, and seeing where that can kind of guide you. So stay curious, and continue to do that. During PT school, uh, life on the other side is better. Life on the other side is better. Um, but and so the actual thing I would say is stay caring, right? Continue to care, and don't let the uh, process of graduating or your internships, your you know, take that away from you. Keep it as much as you can. And then for those who are done, uh, uh, math is math. That would be my words of wisdom. And what I mean by that is, you, uh, whenever, one thing I would have said is like, things things can be better than you ever dreamt of. You just got to expose yourself to those who are willing to help. And so that would be it. Is like, things can be better than you ever dreamt
Wow, man, this was dope. This was absolutely amazing. Where can people find you? So for anyone that heard this episode is like, man, I would love to talk to Coach Kev or Dr.
of.
Kev, and
Yeah.
ask more questions despite where I'm at in my journey, because there's something that you said that related with them or resonated.
Mhm.
Where can they find you?
Oh man, really easy. On Instagram, at Dr. Coach Kev. It's Dr. Coach Kev. Uh, and if anyone's in the Orlando area that would love to just come check out the facility or anything like that, or has just an idea or wants to continue to link up, you can reach me there, or swishpt.com. But truthfully, man, I'm open. I know that I wish I could ask questions to those who are in it and are doing it. So do not hesitate. That's what I'm an open resource, and yeah, I love it.
Man, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, man. This was absolutely phenomenal. And shoot, who knows? We might do another one in the future
Oh man.
as we continue to evolve and level up, or if we get questions about this episode. But for those of y'all that are listening, what I'll tell you is this: just understand that if you're wherever you're at, you're not the only one. You are not the
Hmm.
only one that's experienced what you're going through right now. Be inspired by other people. Put yourself around other people that are either going through what you're going through or have already been where you're at. Leverage them, lean into them, because the only other option is to quit. And if you quit,
Hmm.
you'll basically never realize everything that you desire. So that is it. Hopefully this inspired the mess out of you. And if you enjoyed this, please just share this out with at least one other, or two other
Yeah.
peers that would value this. And if you do that, then everybody is blessed because of it. So
I
that's
have
it. Anything else?
yeah, one last thing. Those who are going through a hard time, or whatever, whether it's school, whatever it is, just know, it makes your story better. So that makes your ability to relate to people better. So
Wow.
that is might be hard now, will be a blessing later. So it makes your story better.
Wow. Wow. Man, that was amazing. Yo, appreciate you, brother. Y'all have
Of
an
course, man.
amazing, amazing rest of your day. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Like I said, if y'all enjoy this, please share this out, and understand that you're always one step closer to everything you desire, as long as you don't pull the plug. Have a blessed one, y'all. Bye.